The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a blood-red glow over the rugged mountains of North Korea. Sergeant Adam Lawson had never thought he'd be in this situation, but as his boots sank into the muddy ground, he knew this was no ordinary mission. He was far behind enemy lines, in a place where the rules of war didn't apply. Adam had been part of a small reconnaissance team on a mission to track the movement of a North Korean military convoy. It was meant to be a quick operation, nothing more than a few days of gathering intel before they pulled out. But somewhere along the way, their mission went wrong. A sudden ambush, a hail of bullets, and then blackness. When Adam woke up, everything was wrong. The sharp, pungent smell of iron filled his nose, and his wrists were bound tightly behind him with coarse rope. He was alone. There were no sounds of his comrades, no buzzing of drones or chatter on the comms. Just silence. Deep, unnatural silence. The walls around him were cold concrete and bare. He could hear the faint hum of machinery in the distance, but the air was thick with the kind of tension that only a prison could have. A door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside, tall, with a military cap and a face that could have been carved from stone. He spoke in a clipped tone, with the icy authority of someone who knew exactly how powerless Adam was. "Sergeant Lawson," the man said, his eyes scanning Adam from head to toe. "You are a prisoner of the Korean People's Army. You have no rights here." Adam swallowed hard, his throat dry, and the reality of the situation set in. This was not going to be a normal captivity. This was North Korea. Prisoners were never seen again. The chances of escape were slim, but Adam wasn't a man to give up easily. He had survived worse. He had to survive this. The days blended into one another. Adam was moved from one dark, cold cell to another, each one smaller and more suffocating than the last. His only company was the guards. Stoic, silent men who never spoke unless commanded. And when they did, it was always to demand something, his compliance, his obedience, his silence. For the first few days, they didn't speak to him at all. They didn't need to. The isolation was enough. Adam wasn't just locked up, he was erased. His identity, his very existence, was a whisper in the winds of the prison complex. He was given only a meager portion of food, half a bowl of rice and a few vegetables that tasted like dirt, and water that always seemed lukewarm and stale. He would sit for hours, staring at the cement walls of his cell, replaying every moment of his capture in his mind, searching for a mistake he might have made, a way he could have avoided this. But there was nothing. On the fourth day, they came for him. The door to his cell slammed open, and two guards grabbed him roughly by the arms, pulling him from the darkness and into a dimly lit interrogation room. The floor was slick with something foul, and the chair they forced him into was cold and hard. The man who had first spoken to him, the one with the icy gaze, stepped forward. His voice was low, almost too calm. "You're a soldier, Sergeant. You must know that we can make you talk, make you tell us everything you know. Your life is in our hands now, and we will make sure it's the worst kind of life." Adam's jaw clenched, but he refused to speak. He had been trained to resist torture, to endure pain, to keep his mind sharp. They wouldn't break him. Not like this. But the guards were relentless. Over the next several days, Adam endured physical and psychological torment. They beat him until he couldn't see straight, deprived him of sleep for days on end, and subjected him to mock executions that left him trembling in the corner of his cell, barely clinging to his sanity. They gave him no food, just enough water to keep him alive. They tried to wear him down, to break him. Each day, Adam held on. Each day, he reminded himself that if he gave up now, if he succumbed to the fear and the pain, it would be over. No one would ever hear his story. No one would ever know the price of resistance. 6 weeks into his captivity, Adam knew that time was running out. His body had been pushed to its limits. His muscles were weak, his mind foggy from exhaustion and hunger, but his resolve had never been stronger. He had to escape. There was no other option. One night, while lying in the darkness of his cell, Adam began to think. He had memorized every detail of the prison's layout, every guard shift, and every possible escape route. The walls, the doors, the windows. He had studied them all. But the real key to his escape wasn't physical. It was psychological. The guards never expected him to be clever. They underestimated his ability to plan, to think several steps ahead. They saw him as just another soldier, weak, defeated, and broken. But Adam knew something they didn't. He had lived through worse. It started with small acts of defiance. When they brought him food, he would move it just out of reach, testing the guards' patience. He began to mock their tactics, to laugh when they tried to intimidate him. The more they tried to break him, the more determined he became to stay intact. His mental strength was his advantage, and he wasn't about to lose it. Then, one evening, as he was escorted to another interrogation room, he saw it, a moment of opportunity. The guard on his left was distracted, talking to another officer, and Adam took his chance. With lightning speed, he twisted his wrist, breaking free from his restraints. He kicked out with his legs, knocking the guard off balance, and grabbed a loose piece of metal from the corner of the room. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He lunged toward the second guard, striking him with the metal shard. The man crumpled to the ground, groaning in pain. Adam didn't hesitate. He grabbed the guard's rifle and made his way toward the exit. The hallways were quiet, but he knew that wouldn't last long. His heart raced as he moved through the shadows, every step bringing him closer to freedom. But the prison was a maze, and the escape was not as simple as he had hoped. He fought through the labyrinth of corridors, using his training to stay low, to keep out of sight. Every footstep echoed like a gunshot in his ears. Every shadow felt like a threat. Finally, he reached the outer walls. But there was one last obstacle. The gate. Heavy iron bars locked shut. Adam slammed his shoulder against it, trying to force it open, but it wouldn't budge. His mind raced. He was close. So close, but he couldn't afford to waste time. The guards would be after him soon. In a final act of desperation, he used a rifle to pry at the hinges of the gate, his hands shaking with fatigue and fear. After what felt like an eternity, the gate creaked open, just enough for him to slip through. The next few days were a blur of survival. Adam had no plan beyond escape. He was simply focused on getting as far away from the prison as possible. He had no food, no map, and no way of knowing what lay ahead. But he did have the one thing he needed, his will to survive. He navigated through the dense forest, moving by instinct and memory, trying to avoid detection at all costs. Every sound made him jump. Every rustle of the leaves felt like an enemy closing in, but he kept moving. It was after 3 days of exhausting travel that Adam finally stumbled upon a small village. He was weak, dehydrated, and covered in dirt, but he was alive. And in that moment, he knew he had escaped something far worse than just a prison. He had escaped the very thing that had tried to break him. The villagers, though wary, took him in. They provided him with food and water and helped him contact the U.S. Embassy. It wasn't long before he was airlifted out of the country and returned to safety. Adam Lawson's escape from a North Korean prison became the stuff of legend. His story was told in whispers among veterans, in the halls of military academies, and in the pages of classified reports. His escape was a symbol of resilience, of the unbreakable will of a soldier who refused to give in, no matter the odds. Years later, when Adam was asked about his time in the prison, he would simply say, "It wasn't the walls that held me. It was my mind. I knew if I stayed strong in here," he would point his head, "I could escape anywhere." His legacy wasn't just in his survival. It was in the strength of his character, the power of his mind, and the belief that no matter how high the walls or how strong the enemy, there was always a way out, if you had the will to find it.